Hi, welcome to my channel. In this episode, I want to address a bunch of dents in this door. It's something that's been annoying us since we bought the house. Just seems to be one that is a lot of work, and there's so many other projects that just keeps getting put off. Well, I can't put it off any longer. To look at this door with all the light on, doesn't really look like there's anything wrong with it. But it is a metal door. If it was a wood door, you could put some wood filler in it and paint it. As a metal door, and it has a high gloss finish on it, I've seen a few videos online of people that are doing metal doors and repairing them, treating it like body work on a car, but they're still not doing it right. Yeah, because it's not out in the elements like a car, what they're doing will work, but for the longevity of something like this, you've got to prep the metal correctly in order for it to bond, especially if it's just a small ding. You can fill over those and they're probably not going to come out, but they can flake, they can peel if you don't prep that surface. Now, I have some pretty large dings in here, one in particular right here on this edge. The vibration on this door could easily pop that one out if it's not prepped correctly. And because it's on this edge, it's a visual piece there that if you don't do it right, it's going to be obvious that you fixed something there and didn't fix it correctly. So I'll show you how to do that. My body man skills from doing classic cars has shown me the right way over the years. I've done it wrong in the past too, and they fail. So I'll show you how to do it right. And one of the first things I need to do is mark all these dents. I could do this on the door right here, but it makes a mess. Sanding, prepping it, getting it ready correctly, you get sanding dust. Well, the filler that I'm going to use on here, when I sand that and sand it smooth, it gets a lot of dust. And this is a nice room. Yeah, you can dust it, but it gets in everything. It gets in all the little details. So why make a mess? I can just take this door off, take it out in the garage, and leave the mess in the garage. So the best way for me to show you all these dings is to turn this light off. Now with the light coming from the front door and all the shadows that it's casting from coming across, these dents really stand out. So what I like to do is take a Sharpie and mark all those. There's a big one there. There's a nasty one on the edge here. This one's the worst one. Because when it dented in here, it pushed out here. So if I just filled over this and sanded that contour, there's going to be a high spot right here. So that needs to be tapped down. This, preferably, I would like to pull it out. I have some dent tools that I can use to pull this dent out. I can weld on a stud and pull it. That's my preferred method. You can glue on a stud and pull it. I haven't had very good luck with those dentless, or I should say, paintless dent removing tools. Since I've got to grind this and fill it, then why not just go ahead and weld on a stud? But this is a hollow core door. Most hollow core doors have a paper filler inside. So if I weld on a stud right there, I could cause an internal fire. Could smolder and burn. Don't want that. So fillers, the common fillers that you use for body work, you can go up to 1/4 of an inch thick. That's thick stuff. So I will tap this dent down and I'll fill this and just leave it. I won't pull it out. I won't use any of the glues and studs or anything that way. If it was a really big dent, then I would figure out how to slightly pull that out, but not really much to worry about there. So now as I'm looking across this door, I'm seeing a lot of waves. There's a dent here. So the shadows coming from my front windows just really makes all these little dings and waves stand out. When I turn on all the lights, they disappear. They're really not that bad. So if I always had this condition of lighting, I probably wouldn't even mess with it because you don't notice. But it just so happens the way my lighting is in this room, as you come down the stairs, they're just so noticeable. With this many dings, especially this area from shutting the door, having keys in your hand, this is all ripply and wavy. So I want to fix all this. With this many dents, does it make sense to fix it? Well, really, it's up to you. These doors are not cheap. And to get the exact hinge placement and hole placement, sometimes you end up having to get a blank door and you've got to cut your own holes. And unfortunately, this door on the other side, the garage side, is covered with even more dents. Well, those have never really bothered me. The lighting in the garage, everything out there, don't even notice it. So that's okay. I'm not going to worry about the other side. But this isn't that much work to do. Take the door off, take it out the garage, grind down all these spots, and I'll show you how to do that. That's weird. This one seems to be stripped out. I'm really surprised I haven't had any problems with that. It is definitely stripped out. Oh, that's something I'm going to have to fix. These hinges are spring-loaded so that it pulls the door shut. This particular type has a pin through it, and you take the pressure off the pin, remove the pin, and then you just keep rotating it until you get all the pressure off of it. I've seen others that have an adjustment on the top that you turn. Some will have like a little bit of a nut. So it just depends on the style, but you'll have to take that pressure off so that you can get the screws out. So what I have here is a variety of the tools of a body man. I've got a bumping hammer with a pick, and I'll use that to knock that high point down. Got pneumatic sanding boards for a large area. Got a DA, a dual action sander. I've got a little die sander, a little die grinder that I can hit some of these small areas with. And then I've got sandpapers and sanding boards for those of you that don't have the power tools, pneumatic tools. I actually have a electric sander too. So I'm going to just do this the hard way. I'm going to do it all by hand. I'll start out by using my DA just because I want to knock all this surface down and really scuff up these areas, especially this big area. But everything else I'll do with some hand tools, just so you can see you can do it inexpensively. You don't need to buy all these. This is like $250. So the DAs are fairly inexpensive. These you can get for 20, 30 bucks. But like I say, let's tack these areas. And the one I want to start with is this one that has the high point. So if I take a straight edge and put on this area, it's flat here, and now it's rocking You can't really see how high that is, but by the sound of the rock, it's pretty high and it's pretty large. It's actually larger than I had thought it was. It's a high spot about that big. So if I tap that down, now I'll use my straight edge again. Still high. Okay, I feel really good about that now. All of these little dings, I want to be able to just kind of hit them with a thin filler. So I'll probably end up pretty much coating this whole area, and then I can sand it with a sanding block to flatten it out. These are kind of hard to see, but they're fairly deep. They're about 1/8 of an inch deep. This one's probably about 3/16 of an inch deep thickness of the actual filler that I'll be putting in it. So it's still within the specs for the manufacturer, but I want to really scuff this up. This is a 36 grit sandpaper, so it's going to leave really deep scratches, and that's what you want when you've got an area where it's a deep indentation. Those have a tendency to pop out, especially the vibration of a closing and opening and closing, opening and closing a door. You don't want these popping out on you. So I want a really deep, rough scratch. And on a high gloss like this, the fillers do not stick well to a high gloss. So you definitely need a really good scuff. I've gone all the way down to bare metal here in spots. Not much to worry about there with the types of fillers that you use. If you're using a good quality filler, direct to metal type of a filler, then you don't have a problem with that. But there are some fillers, like my glazing putty, that don't bond well to direct metal. So you also have to watch that application. These are about the deepest ones that I want to really get a deep scratch for. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to hit this whole door with my DA. And I'm going to use 80 grit sandpaper over all of this flat surface so that I have a good, fairly deep scratch for the minor dents. But before I do that, if I go over this whole thing with the DA, all my marks are going to disappear. And as you scuff up this shiny finish, it's hard to see those dents again. So I want to heavily mark the lowest points of all these dents so that when I go over them with the DA, it's not going to sand that mark off, and then it'll be easy to find. Another way you can do it is just use a can of black paint, like a flat black, and just mist over all those areas. And then when you sand over it, those low spots will still be there. Now if I sand this with the DA and these black marks disappear, then they have actually been filled with the paint. So I don't even need to worry about going back and finding those because they'll naturally just fill in as I sand everything off. So now you can see what I was getting at. There's a little ding, there's still a little black spot there, and there's quite a bit of a black spot right here. As I've completely sanded through, I'm down to bare metal in spots. I can see some little shiny scratch marks. So that's what I want to do over all of these areas. And then with the DA, I'll take the shine off from all this gloss paint because I want a good bond to that. 80 grit sandpaper would show all those scratches. With the paint I'm going to be using on this door, it might show up. So I will go back over this after I've filled all these spots. Those sand scratches in the filler will probably show in the paint. Automotive, I would go to a 600 grit and really make it flat. But with this, probably about a 220 sandpaper is as smooth as what I would really need for typical household paint. I like to spray it on. You get a lot better finish. But with a good quality paint, you could brush in these areas and roll on the rest. It'll give you a good look. I've knocked off the majority of the shine. I just need to go down in all of these areas, and I'll do those with a scouring pad. That'll be the easiest, just to knock the shine off of those. As I'm looking across this now, all my black marks are gone in this area, and there's only just a few very light shiny spots. So if I sand this a little bit more, I don't even need to put any filler on here. The paint is going to get the high and low spots. Knock off the high spots, the paint fills the low spots. I won't need to worry about that. But I still have a whole lot of dark spots that I've scuffed up enough that I've taken off the shine, but I'm not taking off the actual black marks so that I remember where all these dents are. So these really deep ones, where I have sanded down to bare metal and there's still some shiny showing, I'm going to use the 36 grit to really scuff those up to get a deep scratch so that I have a really good bond for my filler. So I've got about 5 or 6 of them that I'll be using auto body filler on. And then all these others, they're so light that the black was starting to sand off with my DA. So no reason to go down to bare metal on any of that area. I've got a good scratch. I feel that my glazing putty will fill all of those and get a good bond. On a wax paper pad that I mix my filler on for a patch this big, to a line of hardener, and mix it in good. This dent here is so deep, and the contour is so messed up that I'm going to have to do this in a couple of coats. Might even take 3 coats. Alright, while this is setting up, I'll mix up some lightweight spot glazing putty and get all the rest of these areas. So the glazing putty I'll be using is the U-Pol Dolphin Skin. Very nice stuff. It mixes easy, it goes on smooth, it dries really fast. So don't mix very much because you end up wasting a lot of it. And typically I don't make this much, but I want to try to tackle this all in one pass. Well, these get good and hard. It's nice if you can hit it before it gets really, really hard. But you don't want to start sanding it while it's still too soft, and then it starts to roll and peel up on you. Well, while this is all setting up, I'll go ahead and get a Scotch-Brite pad and just scuff up all these areas where it's real high gloss. If you were painting a door that has semi-gloss or flat paint, you wouldn't really need to take this step, but with a high gloss, you want to make sure the paint's going to bond to it. And it really doesn't take much to just scuff it up, take the shine off. Once these areas set up, and they feel pretty strong, still a little hazy and sticky on a couple of these spots, but I like to use an 80 grit self-adhesive sticky on a long board. I got 3 different sizes. For a real large area like this, I like to use a long board. I can really flatten it out. For some of these smaller areas, something like this does a great job. Then when you get into tighter spots, a smaller one. And with a fresh piece of paper, you just kind of go over it lightly. You don't have to push very hard. Knock off the high spots, and it'll take off some of the sticky. And then you can start getting much more aggressive with it. Depending on the quality of your filler, you'll get some areas that kind of gums up your paper. Just use a wire brush to get that out. There's a dark area here and a dark area here where I haven't even begun to sand the surface. That's the surface area. And you can see high area, and these are low areas. And then there was a little ding right here. That's actually filled that ding. But this area, like I suspected, would probably need another coat. I need to pretty much just glaze this whole area again. And that I'll be able to use the long block, and I think I'll use this longer one. Then I can really work this area and make sure this is smooth, especially where that big dent was, and then this high spot. Where I've tapped down that high spot, then I need another coat. Alright, so I feathered this out in a big area, and while that's setting up, I'll start sanding this lower area. One thing I really like about this U-Paul Dolphin is it sands really quick and easy. This flat surface is all feathered out and looking excellent. So this is done. Now I just got to get this contour. I ended up with a lot of filler overlapping that edge somewhat intentionally, so that where that low spot was, I can bring that contour back. With all that dust, you can see now why I didn't want to do this in the house. That's it. It's ready for paint. I think it's going to be easiest for me with the finish that I want on this. I want a roller texture. So I'm going to put this door back on. Don't put on the hardware. And I'll just literally paint it in place. And I can just put down some masking tape on the floor. And I'm good. So as you can see, I got the door back on. I masked off the hinges, masked the floor. I painted with a brush in this area, and I rolled on the rest. I did 2 coats, and I could kind of see shadows where those filler areas were. So I went ahead and did 1 more coat, and it turned out beautiful. So right here was a pretty good dent. And this area right here was the worst one. There was a big crease right here. So you can see, as I look down that, perfectly straight, perfectly smooth. And this area, I didn't put in any filler. It just sanded out really smooth. There's a little bit of filler in this area. Some filler in here. All perfectly smooth. Very nice finish. Really happy. Finally having this done. So most of the trim in this house, the doors are a gloss and the trim is all gloss. So little by little, as I've touched up all the trim, touched up the doors, I've changed them all to semi-gloss. Just kind of knocked down that shine. And especially on a door like this one that gets so much abuse coming in and out of the garage multiple times during the day. So now I've got one more of my home projects finished. I've still got a couple more projects that I need to do around the house before I can get out and start working on my Jeepster. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you tuning in. Give me a like if you like what I'm doing. Leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again soon.